Stubborn crickets, folks. We is some stubborn crickets. It's not a judgment, it's a fact. I'm not quite sure what more to say about it. And yet every day, every week, I guess I can say every day, but more often every week, I can go through and say there's one or two less crickets in us. And that's a little bit encouraging. And I don't know why. There's a leveraging multiplier effect that we can get into that I see working all the time. It really won't take everybody. It may take enough of the people that listen to me that finally decide that they have a thing they want to go do and where to go do it. And there's methods to do that. There's ways to defeat these people that have intruded upon our ways of life and made us uncomfortable and literally now coming to kill us. The leverage effect is pretty magnificent. And that's why it really is not going to take a whole lot, but it does take way more than what we have at it. In fact, that seems to be a common theme. More and more people are now, when they're finally starting to see what I'm saying, when they finally start applying it, really that's where it's at. You realize it really isn't going to take that many, just people buckle down and do what they need to do. And I can also tell you there's a big chasm between what you think you know and applying it. There really is. I didn't realize until all these years now, talking behind the woodshed and helping people, this really is a big jump between what you think you know, having to qualify that it is something you need to know, and then applying it correctly. And maybe I'm speaking in a more technical sense because we do deal with those that are in the seats of decision who have a cover of officialness, and there's a communication thing that has to, communication styling it's almost as if they've restricted your communication style to what they expect. And that's a control thing as well. And so one of the ideas is you should do it that way that they have no excuses. And that's really what I do. I work out all their excuses and I defeat everyone I can find. And I'm ready to listen for new ones to defeat those as well. So it is a little bit more than just doing the straight talk to somebody, because you're dealing in the situation is a dishonesty state. It's a state of dishonesty. They have you in the state of confusion. They have you in the state of confusion even if you don't think that you're confused. And I know that pretty quickly as I talk with people. Again, this is not a judgment. This just is the practice of it. And believe me, I wish it was different. Talking with a couple people, they tell me they thought they knew what they were talking about and this is particularly to the mining law and property law, actually, across the board. I apply these things pretty universally. All these principles I tell you, or forget to tell you, things that just kind of ride along that I think I tell you, that are just a part of what I use, is property law. And really that kind of spreads out through, remember now, we have property law, we have the relationships, we have contract law here, we have interferences, we have all kinds of things that build into this. It's really fascinating. Just getting to the property is really a powerful core. I can apply that across the board, but it's getting to the point here. Amazing to me how many people, in particular miners, who would say, I thought I knew what I was reading and understood the law until I talked with you. What we're actually talking about is not the law they were reading, but the application of the law where they're going to speak to it with someone aggressing against them wrongly. Typically, you won't have a problem when they're not wrong, but it's always this. It seems to be almost 100% now. Those in the seats of decision are the ones that fabricate a seat of decision to have a say. They're wrong, and when it comes to property and it comes to officialness on that's a felony. And it's really fast to identify it. So it's amazing to me. I just need to repeat this. It's one thing to know you see the truth of the problem and the wrongness in the condition, and you can read the laws and you can think you know them. It's almost a completely different thing to wield that. To know of a gun is not to be able to be a sniper. And I guess, maybe I shouldn't have chosen that example, but that's kind of what it is. You may know of something, but may not know how to wield it. And if you get into piloting, you realize that when you get into becoming a pilot, it doesn't mean you fly everything. You are only flying, really, and you understand you better figure this one out quick. You only fly a certain type of aircraft. And if you're going to fly a different type, you have to be what they call typed for that aircraft so that you understand, you're trained in all the nuances of it. So knowing a plane doesn't know how to fly. Knowing to fly doesn't mean you're going to fly that type. And this is the kind of specialty, if I can say it that way, that specialty change that happens with what I'm saying between what you think you know, finding out whether or not that's the truth, and then actually applying it. It's a world of difference in a way. And yet it's not. It's pretty simple. It's just learning. They have us in a mindset that allows us to wrongly apply everything we know. It's really been fascinating to watch. And so what was the proof for me again and again and again? And what is the proof? Not was, but is. The confirmation that I know something that was beyond someone's earnest study, and then being able to show them that they didn't understand how to apply it, and then they get that. They really start to understand it. That's the confirmation. It's the application experience thing that goes and makes or breaks your whole ability to address any of this, anywhere. And I'm really astonished at us as people. We really got done in good. We got duped pretty good in lots of areas. I would have never believed it. Like I said, I wasn't so smart. I had to have those rose-colored glasses slapped off my face. And the rose-colored glasses, I guess I haven't even said it this way. Those rose-colored glasses are not actually the truth either. So this is how deceived we are is pretty amazing, really. I mean, it's kind of an embarrassment when you really think about it. It's not like I talk because I'm so smart. No, I'm finding out how dumb we've been, how dumb I am. And like I've told you before, reading the Protocols of Elders of Zion, and it took me a few days to do that, that was a devastating wake-up call. That truth of that, not the Zionism side, that it was telling me there's people, it tells you, it should tell you. I hope you've been reading. I hope you've read it. I hope you got this. It's a self-evident truth when you read this. There is frailties in you that can be exploited, and there's people out there that know of those frailties and more, and they do exploit them. And if you want any proof, just look out in the world. You see how many people are living underneath these tyrannies that, listen, they threw tea off a boat, whether that was contrived or not, it doesn't matter. The people got behind it. A big thing happened around that whole thing. They threw tea off a boat for a 3% tax? Our lives are now taxed maybe up to 80%, and then the controls over the top, and crickets is how far gone we are. And the answer is one less cricket. You want to talk about one less? Yeah. Don't do it with a vaccine, though. You inoculate yourself, but don't let the pharmaceuticals get a hold of you. One less. Just be one less cricket. Understand that knowing a thing is not being able to respond through it to do a thing. And that's a big jump, but it can be done. It's real simple. I'm having, been having over, how long now, 10 or 15 years, going on, well, maybe 11, 12, not quite 15, but trying to figure out how to communicate what appears to be a complexity is not. So trying to burst through that, then trying to state that in a simple way so that anyone can hear it and pick it up and realize how they apply it. Because I cannot apply it. All y'all have to apply your own. I can only give you an idea on how to approach a problem, to bust through all the nonsense, and then allow you to see the clarity of that narrow path. And typically that's enough. That's enough for you to see that at least what I'm proposing, at least as a proposal, is so much more understandable and actionable than anything else you thought you had up front. So this is the defect behind the Woodshed. I can tell you the principles, but you're gonna go out in the future one day and have to apply those principles. I may not be there to help you, and those of you that I can and have, you see how simple it is, and it's really just reducing everything down to simple discussions like jurisdiction, which is this word that most people don't quite understand, and we get lost in. But it's not that important. More than to say, what a power and authority does anyone have to do a thing, anything? And our problem is we're 2-3 steps behind the fact that we don't even know where to ask to look in the first instance to find out whether or not their answer was even correct. As I've told you, if you answer to a rule violation, You've impliedly agreed to the code implementation upon you. So you got to understand the first point of departure. And then if you agree to the code, you're impliedly agreeing that it could be applied. And that's a dangerous one. That's why I use the codes when I know absolutely there's no attachment. But if there's a question, I won't use the codes. I'll go to the enactments. I'll go to the laws that may not even be in the codes. Because remember, the codes are the occupier's reviser's opinion on where these statutes are supposed to be that they've created and changed over time under international law. There may be enactments that they couldn't change that you have to go find. So those are invisible to you. And I can tell you they're not on the internet for the most part. In other words, my finding out that the states were taken over, not all of them in the United States of America, but at least adopting the Model Business Corporation Act in 1953, I didn't find that on the internet. Well, it was on the internet if I knew. Now that I know where to look, it was in the statutes, but I didn't know what I was looking at until I had to go to the archive and read it out of the archive from 1953. And I had to understand they had referenced a bill that they didn't show us the text to. It happens to be the adoption of the occupying force into your country, into a state, overthrowing the permanent laws of the people. It says that right in the statutes, but we don't realize the import of that. So nothing's been secret, but nothing's been really that clear if you don't understand the language that's being used. And then, how does that, because you know it, how do you address it? And that's been a much longer battle. And this is where we get to the point, as I told you, it wasn't even something I could, in my mind, in my perception, believed I could attack directly by attacking the Model Business Corporation Act in 1953. I ended up doing that as a collateral attack on an implied authority or jurisdiction a judge took on. In the statement of without showing the authority, giving one of the suitors, the defendant suitors, a status that was not in law. And I was then able to bring out the Model Business Corporation Act on this so-called governor to show that what the judge, who was actually a party in the case because of conflict of interest by the parties we sued, the Bar Association, and collaterally attacking the university system to which this federal judge was a trustee to one of the law schools, which gives information aiding and abetting this felony we know as sustainable development and the destruction of your Republican form representative government, an ongoing felony. He was all party to all this. I was able to come in and show, listen, you just gave that so-called governor too much. He's only an officer in this corporation underneath this Model Business Corporation Act, underneath this statute right here. So he's not a governor. Well, I guess he can be a governor, but not of the people. And so we were able to pretty well destroy all that. No one came back with anything. I told you they were crickets, and that's the kind of crickets you want. So there's a way to get all this, but as I just said all that, I'm sure there's most of you don't even understand how I even could get there, let alone that we did that. And that's the distinction that I don't even know if I can explain most of it unless we got into conversation and you had specific questions and we had answers and some direct communication. That is what I'm telling you is the distinction between what you think you know and what you actually need to know, and what works when you go to apply what you think you know that is what you know. And maybe that's a lot of nonsense sound and dialogue, but it's all sits there and my mind just goes through the list of what the failures were until we start to understand it. I understood it better. I applied right through all that, and we got some interesting responses, which is really no response. When you get the criminal locked down, there's really not much they can say. What are they going to defend their criminality? Not likely. And so here I'm off again. I always have my tabs. I got hundreds and hundreds of tabs to tell you all this stuff in the world, all that's going on around us, to point out to us what's going on, and give me a clue to tell you how to stop it. And I don't even start there. I got all this work I do, and I don't even start there. It's pretty amazing. Happens right as I'm watching the encoders hook up. All of a sudden, my mind goes into what I'm going to talk about. It has nothing to do with what I thought I was going to talk about. Whole different thing. So let's get over to that now. Very important stuff. Again, I try not to bring just the news, as you will. We're kind of beyond the media. I'm saying here's these things they tell us that's noticed to you. To me, they're evidence of the crime against us, or opportunities that we can use to pry the beast off the rock it's got and take away its little precious, which happens to be its hand around your throat. And we get to peel the fingers away and see how that works for them. right now they're having their way with us. And you can be okay with that. That's not my choice. But I cannot make that choice for you. But that's in fact the point. It's our choice. You've heard me say it over and over. You're now hearing lots of other hosts now say it. I'm actually hearing things that, in fact, I just heard it here the hour before me, being stated that the policy is really just police. How long have I been telling you that? And it's now just meeting the lips of other people that have been doing media for a long time. So we're living in a police state. If we give it that much latitude, I find more and more a military occupation or potentially conquest is a lot more relevant to the proof I see in laws as giving us guidelines to the real resistance. As I ask you to do, stop making up what you think was supposed to be and find out the elements of the life you live and the things against you, and then take those elements you find today, go apply them to some form of government. Not even government, some form of control. I mean, because this occupation has its government, but it's not your government. Conquest has a government, but it's not yours. And so these things, as I say, do not deny the existence of something that's not yours. It may still exist, and if you deny it, it'll at least control you. If not really, well, it'll kill you ultimately. You become oblivious to the thing you deny, and it just, you get in its way at some point. That's just the law of nature of averages, I think, isn't it? So we can't. I've been saying to you, don't deny that they are out there. They're out there, boy. They're out there to kill you. Ultimately, they're going to get their way. It's the future they want, and they've got the plans for it. So if you aren't even up to that, you're really, I can only say you're backing up compared to where they're going. They're moving every day, and unless we get this kind of thing moving for ourselves and insist on the life we want, it's going to take us down. It's going to take us over, and the future will be what they tell the people. As I entered in telling you, the rose-colored glasses weren't even the truth that I was having to look through that had to be slapped off my face. Do you think that people in the future are going to have the ability to even understand these things? That there was some rose-colored glasses at all? That was even a deception? That there's another reality that's not what anybody thought? I mean, this is so far beyond what I would have ever even conceived. You have to dig in. You have to start seeing it for yourself. I can tell you, as I told I think a handful of people this week, I said, don't listen, don't let me think. You say I tell you more, don't let me be the one that's your source of your information. You go read the source documentation so you take out every question of whether or not I was telling you the truth. You go read it. I already know, once you see this stuff, it's right there. It states it clearly what's going on. When you're ever challenged in the future, you won't be listening. Well, maybe he wasn't so right. Maybe he was wrong right here where they're saying. No, that won't ever happen to you. And that's why I say it's so important to get that black and white, get the proper black and white. So let's move into things that are going on. I tell you, I broached the idea that these sustainable development people that are in seats of decision, I've now found out, being able to prove it, finding out, I'm talking about proving it, doing the proof, writing it down, actually making it official, submitting it somewhere, that these supposed sustainable development agenda promoters are actually war criminals and go beyond. They're not actually doing what they even tell us that we think they're doing. And I've done a proof, and here's a little bit of evidence to that. And again, it's evidence that you can use to start looking through, to start working more efficiently. It makes you much more highly efficient. You cut right through the nonsense, and you look like the wonder boy or girl. And you always get there. We're always asked this: where'd you get that? They don't embrace the truth of what we're saying. They're embracing how they're being found out is what they're doing. Where'd you get that? They want to find out because that's another document they need to destroy somewhere. And we learn real quick: don't tell them. You'll get it when you get the proof in a court of law as evidence of a public record. Then you'll see it. You know it. It's already in your possession, but we're going to not tell you what it is, so you can't get rid of it. So you learn to play this, like I told you, the application of what I'm saying in this war, this battlefield America, and it's really battlefield Earth, is really kind of an interesting dynamic to think about. TTIP leaked documents confirm that Obama requires killing the Paris Accord on climate change. So here they are, war criminals, global war criminals. They're after an agenda. They've been promoting sustainable development. They've been beating you down all these years. Oh, and Ron was talking about earlier that he was pointing out that there was legislation put in before the acknowledgement of sustainable development. That's true. I'll just tell you, that's true for what I've been finding as well. And we've found documents in counties as early as the 80s so far. And I believe it went before that, because when you got into land use, those land use policies are built around one of the legs of the stool that was coming. No, not the one you drop out your bottom. No, the one you're supposed to sit on. The stool leg was jobs. It's economics. That's job creation. They were doing that in the 70s. So just want to confirm what Ron Stephan was saying on his, as I heard his broadcast, telling you that these laws were set in before it was coming and acknowledged at the federal level. They were in your county. So we found laws at county level 80s, and then we found at state level back in the 70s. So this has been a long time coming against us. This very thing has been coming and killing us this whole time. And then you see this thing now that it's interesting to me. I just now did the proof. It hadn't come to me before. We're going to do that. I did the proof for the treaty violations, and now you take embracing sustainable development to beat them in the head like a baby seal with it. I'm not into baby seal beating, but I'm just saying that's what they're doing to us, and we don't recognize it. And that's all an economic thing as well. We got another story coming up if I ever get to it on polar bears. The United States pulling back from this. Same thing. The TTIP documents confirm Obama requires killing the Paris Accord on climate change. So while they promote it on you and tax you and bring in all these systems in, smart stuff, smart this and smart that, that isn't even it. They're willing to not even recognize it, where corporate governance is going to be the thing. The bottom line. Now you have to. This is a mind boggler, because these corporate people, well, corporations are people too now. They embrace this climate change because it's a tax scheme that they can make write off their taxes on to make more profit. You don't get none of that. Well, unless you do, like we saw in the Panama Papers, you start creating yourself as a corporate entity that shells everything. The point here is that within the TTIP, with the corporate governance players in global sustainable development coming on, they don't even agree with this. All these things are planned to deny to you what they are taking advantage of. And so it's coming out, killing, this TTIP documents are killing the Paris Accord on climate change. Now, to me, this is written by the environmentalists, the insane, to try and get environmental imposition. So this is a dual negative problem for us, because they'll get them both. I mean, this is the point. They'll impose all this, and again, those that are the special people, those special corporations are going to be able to figure out, with the help of the Bar Association and the banks, they're going to figure out the loophole, so to speak. They'll figure out that thin thread that gets them through, and you'll be out in the cold. And if you try to get in there, their bar member association judges will close you out, like you see happening with the MERS problem. It's been exposed. This fraud's been exposed. The United States government was complicit. It actually planned it, and yet you go in there under a foreclosure problem, trying to get your title cleaned up, and the courts will stalemate almost all of y'all. It's just like the vaccine court. Very few get through. And this is almost on a theory that I've worked out. I could see it's like when I wrote paper to avoid traffic tickets and the pre-plea remedy and avoidances, and we'd win those right up off the statutes. We'd win those pretty handily. I had hundreds of people writing that paperwork. I didn't promote it, did anything. I just said, here, why don't you try this? As far as, I didn't sell it or anything. It was just something I came up with. To me, it was just defeat this revenue stream that they've got in a simple paper filing. And then I found out that the government's an amoeba will change the law to take that away from you. And the judges are there to anticipate. You can do it maybe once or twice or in separate jurisdictions, but once they have their meeting and they counsel themselves on this, those papers don't work anymore. And that started to show me this is again, it confirmed the illusion that the courts are the pressure valve. I'm telling you right now, they're crime scenes. You just might as well get your chalk, and when you walk in and on their floor, right, put down a body. Trace a body out and just lay in that body with you right there, because that's what you are relative to that court. It's a crime scene, and you're the victim. Okay, I'm pausing because I want you to think about this. I can't tell you a bigger truth right now. I wish it wasn't so. I keep sitting here. The reason why I'm sitting here quiet a little bit because I just don't want to tell you that and know that that's so. I wish it wasn't. But this is what it's so. These people, as I said, these are war criminals, and they're way beyond war criminals. They're even violating sustainable development here. That's what I was telling you. When I told you before, this gets way deep. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So we're starting to see, I guess the big deal for me here is we're starting to see another layer of the onion peeling here. This is kind of telling us it's deeper than what I'm even talking to you about. And I'm asking you to get involved because you have to be involved to be able to start seeing this deeper thing going on against us. This is not so easy. These people have really planned this well. I only get glimpses. I've got what I've got. I got my decoder ring. I've got other tools. I've got my what I deal in to try and work through it. All my techniques are pretty standard right now, but they're still adjusting. We still see the anticipatory thing. We have to stop their anticipatory thing. What's their anticipatory thing? You start explaining a lot of this to them, they'll change their words. In other words, just to give you a quick example, and so I see I'm so far off of this. It's in line with what we're doing, but it's not on my tabs, is it? I've only got one tab. I've got 1,000 here to go through, but we were telling them, the government, that mining minerals is not a natural resource. So what'd they do? It took them 3 years to do it, but last year they made a law and they said that mining is a natural resource. They made a legalism, a lie that says that mineral extraction is a natural resource. There's no support for that at all, but see, legal can do whatever it wants. It can make black, white, green, gray, blue, red. It can do whatever it wants. It's the force and brutality that allows crime against you so much. And so what they've done is they said, well, mining is a natural resource. That's an impossibility, folks. It's not. In fact, I was just talking to this point. I was asked, well, why isn't it a natural resource for those that may not have heard this? And I've talked to you about this. It's not even to my listeners. You should remember. But they did natural resources because that falls within their sustainable development side that they think they can control. They do it as consumption and commerce, but not as production. So don't forget about that part. That's our out, actually. They can't change that part. You always go to the parts they can't change, right? That's one of the internal secrets, if I can say it's secret. It's not a secret. It's how you deal with it. You go where they can't go. That's legitimate for you to go to. But what they did is they pull you to them. They said mining is a natural resource, and it's not. It's physically, naturally impossible for mineral extraction to be a resource. Is again, right? R-E is again. Sourcing again. Now, that's attributable to what? For one instance, agriculture, correct? You put a seed in the ground, it grows up something, you harvest it, you put another seed in the ground, the seed that the plant gave you, and you harvest it. Well, unless you're Monsanto, and then you kill everything, but you would poison everything. But anyway, for most of us, naturally, you plant a seed, nature does this, plants a seed in the ground, it grows a plant, Mother Nature gives value added for you, the producer, to work that, to pull it off, and we get these products off the land. The ground that grows the plant and the plant that you harvest, the plant is a resource. You plant a tree. It grows, you harvest it. You plant another tree. It grows, you harvest it. Okay, resource, and it's a natural resource, right? So you see, something that grows and comes out of the earth and can be replenished and repeated. That's resource. Minerals don't do that. Minerals, you go to the mineral, you dig it out and you remove it. It's gone. You don't cover it back up like some cat turd and expect it to come back next year, or the year later, or a decade, or an eon later, maybe an eon, depending on what you broke into and how the water flows and whether or not there's mineralization in that water will be whether or not you're going to get any subsequent source of minerals. So minerals, you go into the ground, you dig them out. They're gone. That's why they're property. That's why gold never loses its... Gold in particular, because of the kind of monetize this, is money, it's property, always. This is something that people don't quite get either about gold. It's literally property. We actually should have documents of possession on this stuff. So when you mess with the miner's gold, you're messing with his property, what he's to put his livelihood against. This is pretty deep about how protected this is supposed to be. And again, plunderers don't care. The Mongol horde could care less. They're going to take your stuff. And so, government is not even going to support climate change, this fraud that's on us. They're going to make you pay for it. They're willing to change terms in order to bring you in. And so what we did, they made minerals a natural resource when it's only a source. You find minerals where you find them. You can't move the mineral deposit anywhere else than where it's at in the ground. You're going to have to go there. No matter what you've done on top, you're going to have to go to where the minerals are if you want that mineral for your society. That's why that mineral estate is called the dominant estate. It's all logical when you get in behind all this. It's not as insane as we've been told about. But these people are willing. Remember, government sanctions corporations, which sanction government, and so this is a closed loop incestuous circle that they aren't even this trade agreement. It's not even going to regard even the fraud of climate change. They know it's a fraud. This is another proof. So this is the problem with our life. We go so deep in the frauds, we don't even know what they are anymore, and we get focused on fighting climate change. Why I kind of back off on a lot of this. I don't talk too much about it. I bring it up kind of regularly, but just to show you the stupidity behind it. There's a real natural science I think we need to get into, is why I want to see it. I want us to understand nature a lot better, not get covered over by this nonsense that these science pocus people fabricate for us. Killing the Paris Accord on climate change. They made a big old deal. Let's make the Paris Accord. I touched it on the broadcast here, but the TTIP doesn't even touch that. These people are war criminals beyond. Okay, they're beyond. They don't even follow the agenda. These people, and that tells you the whole thing is really a fraud. And if TTIP and climate change was something important, as I told you before, the United States government, all governments, having the power of the people, would subsidize things that were important to reduce this fraud called global warming by human causation through carbon creation. In fact, now you're seeing that, as I told you years and years ago, the addition into the carbon was going to cause the forest to grow, and now you see maybe even the ramifications of that over the last 10 years, where there's so much growth going on in the forest that well, you folks, if you don't log it, you're going to lose it. And look at Alberta. But solar power would be put on this place. I told you that when I found it was 105% tax credits for those of you that were into that, between the federal and the state and the United States of America, for putting solar power on your place. I said if the government really wanted to do this, I said this years ago, they would be the bulk buyer. You would just simply walk down to the grocery store, if you will, and pick up your panels and bring them home and install them on your house. In fact, maybe if they were smart, they'd actually put a rack on top of the electric car they were giving you, and you just drive it all on home. You'd install it, and you'd have solar panels and an electric car. Well, it comes out how cheap this stuff is actually getting in bulk purchases. The price of solar power just fell 50% in 16 months. Dubai at 0.0299 cents a kilowatt hour. 3 cents a kilowatt hour buying in bulk, and what their bulk in Dubai was nothing compared to what the United States government could do if it wanted to stop climate change, which it doesn't, and we see the proof of it in the prior story, and the corporations agreeing with all this, and the bottom line to them is not to you. They don't care about you. You see $3, 3 cents a kilowatt hour, and you're not getting on top of your house, or like we talked about last week, the family in California got 28% greater production, electrical production on their solar cells than they were allowed by the government. They got penalized. And my question was, why didn't they just buy an electric car? Electric cars, I've been into electric cars since long time. I thought they were fascinating. Our problem back when was power transfer. The technology's got advanced, the power transfer now that you see now Tesla can build a car that goes 300 miles on a battery charge. And the battery technology's gone way up. That was really what I worked on a lot. Long time ago, it was battery density, always been battery density. And my upbringing through what I wanted to go do was looking into that. I designed different materials. I didn't know about nanotechnology. That would have been nice to know back when, but they do it now. And so you have a car that can go 300 miles on a charge. Oh, it's a $100,000 car. Not when you're subsidized by the government, because that's the imposing imperative. 3 cents a kilowatt hour, folks. Where are they? Why don't we have this on our properties? It's because this is a lie. They don't want you to do this. So this was the reason why this price came up in Dubai was that the government put out a bid to companies on how they could build a big solar farm, and that was the price. And so my thought was, you're going to see at least a magnitude less when the United States buys more than the 800 megawatts worth of power. Just turn the solar cell printing machine on, folks. Just let it run. They do that for money. Take it for GDP as well. It seems to me the accounting is all there, but you don't see it. And you don't see it because this climate thing, this Paris Accord, the government supporting it and beating you down with it, using it as a club to beat you down like a dead little baby seal. It is not actually the truth. So, what do you do with this? Well, maybe some of you write a letter, get all over your so-called representatives and say, I want the deal from Dubai. How's that? I want you to write a bill that says you're going to give me these panels at $3 a kilowatt, or put me on offset my taxes, or whatever the heck you are saying, because you're promoting we need to do climate change. Embrace the sustainable development. I want the Dubai deal. In fact, I want America to be great again. I want to show how good we are. I want a better deal. Can we say that for ourselves, folks? On the horizon, folks, there's some real interesting technology around electricity right now. In fact, I was talking to one of my friends about. We got another guy who found it. He's one of the guys that's being kind of suppressed in a soft suppression, I guess I should say. They just ignore him. But the things I've seen from what this technology does is the scientists are coming on to what he's already got. They're doing it a different way. And the guy talks to main high-level scientists, so it's not like science doesn't know about what he knows. They just don't understand what he knows. But they're working out how to get around what he knows. So I've seen like the future. You're hearing about all these better conductors for lithium batteries and better batteries. It's there, folks. It's just going to take a little bit. There's going to be an exponential jump, it seems to me, it's relatively shortly. So this may be almost premature, about 3 cents an hour kilowatt hour, but you're not getting it. So why don't you I always try to offer you something to do that's better than what we're doing, mouth breathing or drooling on ourselves, or being crickets that are mouth breathing and drooling on ourselves. Why don't you write your representative, whether you believe it's a representative to you or not, write them anyway. Say, I want the Dubai deal. In fact, I want to see the American exceptionalism. I don't want it for 3 cents a kilowatt. I want the government to buy it so I get it for a penny. In fact, why don't you just give it to me? Show how exceptional America is. Just use their words back at them. So I just want you to know that the technology, as inefficient as it is, that we could be having right now, that would make you power independent and at least transportation independent. At least short-term travel if you don't get a $100,000 Tesla. And I'm hesitant on that because, that company Tesla, for as much as I appreciate what Elon Musk is doing and his rockets and all that, he's tied in. Those cars are starting to drive themselves. They're going to take you where they want to go, and we've already read the story a long while back. If that means it's going to take you down to the jail because they got some thing that they found you doing on the internet, that's where that car is going to take you. So I'm not embracing this completely, but give me an independent car. Give me the power panels to run it and what I need in my life, and I've got energy independence. Can you stand up for yourself and ask for that underneath the banner of climate change, folks? Do you think they're giving us enough to go do that? I think so. Are we doing it? I'm hearing crickets. Here's how big the United States is. It's kind of how this works, monopolizing things, folks. How great the power of the United States of America is. What we could actually do for ourselves, but you don't get it yourself. You human resources. They're sucking parasitically from you. You're never going to get anything unless you stand up for yourself. And even then it may be the battle. In cheese trap, U.S. reaped the fruits of its anti-Russian sanctions. The U.S. is reaping the fruits of its anti-Russian sanctions. It has accumulated the largest stockpile of dairy cheese in 30 years. In fact, there is so much cheese and butter in the U.S. right now, it's unclear what the government will do with it. The government of the United States on infinite debt can buy anything and all of it. If you don't think that market share is something they can monopolize, are you getting cheap cheese prices in the United States, people? What is this cheese going? Oh, I can tell you, I'm hoping that they at least we're going to start seeing a flood of sharp cheddar here soon, because I kind of like that. They're not a better sharp cheddar. Look for the particulars, the ones they don't use the GMO organisms over. That's the better flavor. I got to have a story about that too. But the United States is so powerful, so big, and works on such a big, deep, stinking abyss, it can suck all the cheese off the face of the planet and keep it. We don't know where it's at. If you don't think they can do that in about any other commodity, and you don't see the benefit. This is what they could do to solar power. This is the same thing that you think China, you want to offset China's big trillions they got? They built manufacturing facilities to make cheap solar panels. You think they don't want to offset the liability of that against what they've invested? They're primed to come after and give us 1 cent a kilowatt hour. Do you think we do it for us? No. The government's not here for you. No, they'll suck all the cheese off the face of the planet and give you $8 a 2-pound brick of cheese. Cheese lovers here should be revolting. Well, that would kill Wisconsin, wouldn't it, though? Maybe not, right? See how they get us in the dynamic? I could sure use cheaper cheese. Government cheese, no. Regular produced cheese, maybe, because the government-controlled cheese seems to be this, like, Velveeta stuff. But this is actual real cheese coming from Europe that they're buying and stockpiling. So large is the ability for the United States to control things. And I'm just pointing out that could happen with anything else that we need in our lives, and that plan could work globally. So it's not just the United States doing this for all y'all that want equality across the world. No, this is what we've set up for ourselves. And we can take the benefit of it, and we're not. And we can take the benefit of it to actually magnify the good we do if climate change and carbon loading and footprinting and all this other nonsense was reality. We can shine there, absolutely. We can make up for what China doesn't want to do. Well, no, they live in a stink. They will be living in a stink hole. But for us, we won't be looked on as the nation that contributes to the problem, such that we might believe the fraud. But even so, I wouldn't mind having complete power, independence, separation. Should I use that for Solomon? Separation. Wouldn't you? That's one of the main things I found out early on in my studies. Power and energy, especially electrical energy, is one of the main things you need to become self-reliant in somehow. It's a big leash around our necks. That's why you won't see it. Cheese. A lot of people can like cheese. I don't mind cheese. I don't have a problem with cheese. Cheese makes the world go round at some level. Good cheese anyway. We got some pretty sad stuff they call cheese in the last few decades, but at any rate. The United States is so able to absorb this. They're taking all the stockpiles of dairy products. They're talking cheese here. There's some other butter too, and there's some others. They're just absorbing it. Where is it all going? It's going into refrigerators. What's that cost? What kind of carbon footprint are they doing with that? Did that come from a dam that was from a dam or a coal fireplace? What is this nonsense? See, it has nothing to do with logic. The point is that the United States government is so large in its infrastructure for doing this that it can make and break anything. If it wants to give you a penny per kilowatt power, it can. And you're not receiving the benefit. But Dubai can. Dubai can get it for $3. It's way cheaper than you can. No, they make you go to China to buy it and buy it in what appears to me to be inferior packages with inferior outputs. And then when you go to the guy locally to install it, he does it wrong, and then you don't get the benefit from your money. You don't get to go down and do it yourself. See, it's all, again, all certified licenses to steal from you is what it ends up being. Point is that the point is that the government of the United States is big and bad enough in the financial sector, has enough control to absorb all the extra cheese in the world. And maybe you don't knew it, I didn't know it. I'm going to say you didn't know it, and with all this stockpile, supply and demand, all this ability to produce, you're not seeing it in the stores. No, the price goes up for you. The government doesn't care about us. Are you going to write a letter? Can you do that? Can you keep on them? Not just one. Can you write a dozen of them, and then maybe even go to a meeting and with that letter say, you haven't answered me. Why don't I get the Dubai deal? Why aren't we America? Why doesn't American exceptionalism? Why didn't it originate the Dubai deal for Americans? Why don't we do better? I want solar power and an electric car for a penny a kilowatt, Mr. Representative, Mr. Senator. Put our money where your mouth is. We just embrace the fraud for a bit, I guess. I mean, if they want to say climate change is something we got to have a small footprint, I want my solar cells. Burn. We got to feel the burn, a solar burn. You're going to give me my solar cells? It will be on the Obama phone. Give me my solar cells. Give me my electric car. Put our money where your mouth is. Do we even say that? Do we even know to say it? Well, we know now behind the woodshed. Like I said, most of y'all I'm condemning terribly. Sorry. It's what we got to do. It's what we got to know to do. Now, I'm just, again, developing how fraudulent this entire thing is. It's gone way beyond international war criminal for me now. I've gotten the proof myself. I hope some of you have tracked that and understood what I was saying and maybe even did some of your preliminary reports if I didn't give you enough to go do what I was pointing it out. We're dealing with people that are so evil, they're way beyond war criminal. And my mind, my little pea brain and my little guy brain can't go that far really. I just can't go, how bad is that? How bad is evil? Has to be at how much better good is on the other end, That we're focusing on all the evil doing it, letting the evil do this stuff to us and not turning to what would be good for us. We don't even insist on it. Even if we're denied, we don't insist on it. So it's all, we see the proof has been repeated. I'm not the only guy anymore. I used to be kind of a narrow field, but now people are coming onto it like I heard today. Oh, policy must be like a police state. Well, yeah, I've been saying that for years. How'd you get that? I'd like to know maybe your path. We live in a military state. It's not really a police state. The police are just the more neutral face of this evil that's on us. It's all about supporting that to the security of that system. And now we see clearly that these war criminals are beyond, and they don't even support sustainable development. It ends up being corporate governance. Bottom line, we're going to do whatever we do to make product that you're going to consume, whether or not you want it. We're going to force it on you. Vaccines, folks. You think they can't force stuff on you or impose you? The water they feed you in your systems. And it's not hard to get you all urbanized. Look at I think it's Africa. They're in a terrible drought right now. Now, whatever they want to blame it on is irrelevant. They're in a terrible drought. The people in that place are having to go to the urban areas to get the water they need to survive because the infrastructure is there to supply it. Even as I said, Mother Nature can shake just a little bit, and she can tell us who's in control. But even so, if And then those of us that understand there might be, and have seen the proof since 1928 or so of weather modification and the ability to do it, and that doesn't negate the natural types that we might have known before to do. These certain rainmakers we knew of before that seemed to be like anomalies. Let's put it on there. If they wanted a bunch of people to, and they could alter the weather and cause a drying of Africa and force everybody into the urban centers. You don't think that that's not a migration of people they're putting into urban centers to get you to be dependent upon that system? How easy is it to do that to you? All they have to do is control your necessities, or control you out of them. And so one of the things, the major players in our modern, if I can call it modern life, or they want to call us postmodern, then what the hell are we in? I guess it's the now, I would hope so. But it's all about how they're constrain and control your use, your migration through whatever system they have. We see the power of them to monopolize absolutely all production of even certain products. What do you think they're doing when they buy wheat and they stockpile it, or have millions and millions of gallons of petrol that they just stockpile? This is what the power of a big government can do. But they're always moving and inching forward to the control. We see it on the writings on the wall. We've heard of before it was used to be some kind of a Christian lunatic to say there was a cashless society coming. And yet, isn't that the hub, one of the necessities of our current modern life, if I can say modern? I should say modernized, because that's what they're doing. In the news, right here, folks. Again, evidence of where it's going. Why I've been trying to tell you to develop your own independent thing. Watch out about Bitcoin, because it's being used to hit the libertarian mindset in order to see what their problems would be with it, so they can maybe fix certain things. It was coming. I don't think this is talking to Bitcoin, but here's the story that's telling you it's that cashless society that we were told about is right around the corner. A new digital cash system was just unveiled at a secret meeting for bankers in New York, was the story I had. You can find it. Blogcaster will be available. Last month on a, quote, secret meeting, it's in quotes, so I don't know for sure, that involved more than 100 executives from some of the biggest financial institutions in the United States, was held in New York. During this secret meeting, in quotes, a company known as Chain unveiled a technology that transforms United States dollars into, quote, pure digital assets. So I guess I can stop reading. Those of you that know even a little bit about know this transfer of what was in digits anyway. They've had us in this digital realm anyway. They're going to now stick it into the blockchain, and we've also proven out that that's trackable, beyond trackable. And so, what are you going to do when you go down the store and you don't have your blockchain? You don't have your digital wallet on a card day issue. It's around the corner, folks. They're making a system right on us. The banks are involved. Your life, your whole existence right now revolves around this monetary system and this fiscal system that's not in your control. And this is the way of the world, it seems, for a long, long, long time. Control of a money system. So where are you? And also going down to your so-called representative and your local people and saying, where is the independent system for us? I think states can do that. See, states can only mint coin, right? Doesn't it say that? They can't emit letters of credit. They can't emit any of these other note things, but they can mint coin. Where is your initiative to do that? Create independent money. Independent systems. It's around the corner here, folks. They're controlling us. The TTIP tells us that they're beyond war criminals. They won't even care about the fraud, even following the fraud, proving it's a fraud. It's not even something they're focused on. This system is so big it can monopolize markets, and you don't see the benefit of the potential supply or production, the demand on the production of it. That they're going to make a monetary system which is like maybe 1/3 or maybe 1/2 of your existence, your current existence, and how you get along. It's being controlled. This is now beyond fairy tale. This is beyond any conjecture. This is beyond any so-called religious review of a cashless society. This is happening right now. This has happened in my lifetime. And I'm just kind of been this witness. I'm noticing there's a group of us, it's an age group, that we kind of missed the boomers and we kind of missed the next one that got promoted. We're just this group of wandering witnesses to this abomination. And we got the abomination. That's this adulteration happening right before our eyes. That those of my time are calling this thing out. And we're in a way, we're such a small group of people, generally as a body of people that were grown in some window of time. We were the gaining momentum time. We were after the boomers. We were at the edge of it, as you will. And then we witnessed this thing that didn't make sense. They were saying we were going to go somewhere, and then we never saw the fulfillment. We actually saw it like kind of go over the cliff. And that's what people like me are talking to you about. We're just witnessing this crime, and we're like ineffectual on our own. We see we're also ineffectual individually to do much about it. We can make that decision for ourselves. We can make our decision to finally get it with people privately, if you will, and make an independent monetary system, because we see in the news, they're telling us it's coming, folks. They're telling you we're coming with this. And when we get there and you have not figured out how to avoid it, shame on you. Don't blame us. In fact, now that you're complaining, how about if you go over to this little room over here? We got some pretty pictures for you. They'll invent something new to get your attention. It won't be Bitcoin. It'll be some new thing that you think will get us away from the system. And you'll go run over there to use that, and it'll be the trap you didn't understand because you haven't been listening behind the woodshed on how to identify them things. Or you've been someone that wants to stick your head in the cloud of your cloud of supposed knowledge, pseudo-knowledge, says you knew all about it, thinking that's going to, denying whatever else is all, claiming on philosophies that are out there that mean nothing to these guys. Oh, I'm just going to disregard that drop-in gate with that bright lights and that rail. I'm just going to disregard those dropping panels. I'm just going to go round those. Train? Horn? Doesn't forget it. Crickets is what we end up being. I told you, if we don't do it right, we're crickets. We're going to agree whether or not we can state how much we disagree. If we don't do the right things to not agree, we agree. That deck is absolutely stacked against us. There's only one thing for you to decide: to resist it. And I say this because I was shown the failures, and by what I could see reading the court cases and logic behind certain things and actions. You just can't resist. You have to create your alternate reality. I'm asking you to look at the reality of the substance of the soil to give you some measure of division, divide. Build the chasm they can't touch. If they touch it, they're raiders, they're pirates. They're the horde. Then you can identify them. Then there's no question then. See, folks, when you get into the battle, you're going to start doing what you need to do. You're going to protect yourself. You're going to protect your women. You're going to protect your children. But as long as you kind of walk with both sides, walk over the short fence with one leg over each side, and maybe you only get a splinter or two from the top every once in a while, that's not going to stop anything. It's just going to allow it. You're not going to do what it takes. You'll excuse away what you have to do. I sometimes ask myself, in fact, I got a dual question. What am I doing to straddle the fence to make it look like so I can just kind of justify some other things I just don't want to get in touch with? On the other hand, am I doing enough to stay on one side? It's always this battle in me on where are we. This action you take it's an ongoing decision all the time. What do you choose to do? Why? Is it taking the straddle position? Is it accepting a few splinters there because you're taking a straddle over the fence? Or are you really doing what it takes to stand up in the right thing to do, and really being that resistance, and then knowing that it's not just be resistant, but building the environment for you that gives you some distance and space to respond to somebody that doesn't like that wants to yank you back over, at least into the straddling, or completely over into a system that they are controlling. No, if this is a battle, they're going to try and choke you out. And so it's not going to be easy. So you have to start getting your mind even larger than what I talk behind the woodshed, like way beyond prepper. We're talking about you have to have an alternative society ready to go. Because here's the notice here, folks. It's on the edge. They can not give you the benefit of the energy you need. They can take away and control your food as they want. Don't give you the benefit of the monopoly they can create in the hoarding of food. And now they're going to control how you would even get to all that, how you pay for it. The writing is definitely on the wall here. And some of this is us engaging what's the system already involved, put embarrassment on them and the failure to conform with their own statements and out them that way. And if you're successful, then guess what? You got cheap power. You've now gotten that one thing that they've been controlling you, separated power, independent from, I got to use it that way, from the system that was trying to starve you of that or control how much you're going to get. Remember, if it's independent, it's not smart, it's intelligent. When you keep being smart, you're going to be a part of it. You're going to be having to pay with this, whatever this secret meeting was about on a digital cash system. It doesn't say cashless society, does it? No, but it says digital cash system. And they're talking about a company called Chain. That's the blockchain. That was the setup. I mean, this is like writing on the wall that was written before, and now it's just kind of confirming everything. A lot of the stuff that bothered me about it. I think it's fabulous technology, but it's not being controlled by us, and it's maybe not controllable by us. Because ultimately, unless you have an integrated separate system that's better than based in electrons, they can change all that, steal all that. And we hear about the methods, we hear about the technology they have to take out your computers. If they're not blocking them physically with inside your lines of communication, they just destroy the equipment. And we hear how they do that. If you know about electromagnetic pulse technology, it doesn't need a nuke, folks. Now they got it down to a rocket. It works so well and so efficient they can actually steer a microwave beam right into your room and destroy everything you've got. They don't need to have an atomic blast. I mean, that's kind of what we used to do. We used to make up contraptions that actually caused EMP pulses just to see what the heck they did. And when they went to microwave power transmission, I realized, after doing the experiments, it made all the sense why. It's really not, for everybody thing I hear, they can do nukes over the United States and take everybody out. I'm not so sure. It's not so easy, actually. But it is a power, and it will take out stuff. And so what they went on missiles. They went to missiles with directed beams. That's how they get the power on you. And that power goes right through most everything. It can go possibly even through a wrongly made Faraday cage. So they got technology beyond us as far as all that. They can stop your ability to communicate and to do commerce and do anything. And now the plan, if you don't go their way, if you don't wrap your mind around how this is integrated, we're not going to get it done. There's nothing that we're going to do to be able to avoid it. And so we got the system works hand in hand to support itself. I don't conceive of one state as a violation when I look at a mining district, but state, as we see, state has become this organized crime is something that I hope people make a distinction in what I'm saying, because there's one that we can focus on that looks like an example for us when we're finding out that the one we're in is really not what it is. You have to have a basis to go to. I've been looking. I don't find any logic behind the discussion of anarchy. What I hear is a lot of conditioned anarchy, plug-in anarchy, extensible anarchy. It's not really what anarchy is. It's trying to come up with something that would work better than the failure they see now. But we have to have some organization, a little society organization that works. We can't keep bringing up and dredging up the bad stuff of the past that we know doesn't work, and I hear that all the time in this too. So for me, mining districts look a whole lot more viable. They were governments of miners, men together, and women. We mostly hear the men, but there was women, tough women. I don't know if I'd want to get in a fight with one, but at any rate, And they worked amongst themselves to make societies that worked when they were the outlaws against the bigger government, a bigger horde against what they were doing, which is really not a crime, except for one said that it was. And then they said, well, you can't actually do that. Luckily, the courts of the time says, well, you're being dishonorable to let them go do that over all this time and then go beat them up for it. And so the being honorable, I suppose, and then honoring the fulfillment of the congressional obligations, which shows you something was working there. The mining law was created to embrace these people with the rules and laws they created. And so Hernando de Soto kind of points this out, as I've told you before. The Mystery of Capital was the book, and he explains about this outlaw condition and what bigger governments do it ends up silencing them, but that's not what it sounds like in the beginning. It's just to embrace them. Like I say, embrace the sustainable development and use it as a club to beat these people like little baby seals over the same thing that they claim they're using climate change to hurt you with. Show them the ridiculousness and use it and demand underneath it what they're trying to deny to you, like solar power, which would answer all of it at some level and bring you into some separation of that energy control, one of the legs of the stool. Another one is the financial control, another leg of the stool. It's right here in the news for us. And the other one that protects it all is this thing we've been told is justice, and we know it's just us, not us, it's them, all them. All of it's decided them. It's all set up as corporate structure. You walk into that and you forget to do the presumptions they put against you, and they'll suck you in. And even when you identify them, then they go silent, which is kind of a neat thing to see. I can do that pretty regularly. If nothing else, it's just a neat thing to see. And a fascinating thing came on to a video that Grimner put on reallibertymedia.com. It's called "The Veneer of Justice in a Kingdom of Crime." Really neat video to watch. I may go into the chat rooms now that I've said it. I'll have it on the blogcaster, the link to the Real Liberty Media page. Just a quick summary. The criminal global banking cartel has effected a coup d'etat in the United States. This is why the same criminal financial elite that saw 1,000 of its members go to prison 20 years ago after the S&L crisis is now above the law. And what is presented in this video is pretty neat, the way they did it. I thought they explained it very, very clearly. They brought their proof. They brought a conception of how it all works. But these are the same criminals, not the people that made the video, but what the subject matter is, that are together to make this new digital currency. You can't believe that the people they're talking about in the video, about the court system that protects them, about the DOJ in particular, is what my experiences were. Direct experience now, directly about what the DOJ was. I anticipated the answer to the riddle in the video before it got to us, which I guess should I tell you? Should I say what the real trick is? Maybe I should, because it's important. For those of you that don't want to hear what my answer to the puzzle, maybe don't listen for a second. But they show the DOJ as the actual driver to this, not the industry. And that's our experience. When we went to say, hey, we got some problem in the government, show cause how you're not committing felony and treason, the DOJ sent out the FBI to come after us and threaten our interim chairman and tried to get him to believe that he had terrorized the government. We had all the answers about how that wasn't the fact. But this is the protection system. The FBI agent said the government doesn't believe you. And we answered, but the government hasn't asked to have us show them beyond the show cause, which the government didn't answer, which prima facie is a admission. So, stalemate. They couldn't go after us more than beat up on our chairman just a little bit more, put him on a no-fly list. But that was the end of that part for them. And now we've got him evidence of tampering with witnesses. The government itself is the culprit that you think is actually placed on the people they're letting go. The ideas on how they do this are coming from the government. This completely conforms to how we saw the situation regarding the mortgages in 2008 and how they collapsed it. That was all a plan. So a fascinating video. I want you to see it. I put it on my board, not really talk to it more than just to really, you just need to see this. It's Grimner, I guess, picked it up from another place, and I guess they were allowed to put it. I haven't talked to Grimner about that. It's called The Veneer. What was it? The Veneer of Justice in a Kingdom of Crime. And so, it's a kingdom of crime. I said your courts are crime scenes. but the government's instituting this. It's coming from plans inside the government. Another show. It gives you the idea that you don't have to how this is done. And I can just tell you, we've run right up against it. I anticipated the truth of what they were actually going to say long before they get to the answer about the DOJ. It's internal, folks. This is internal to a system that we remain crickets against. And if you think it stays in the United States, folks, all this money control and all this, no, Canuckistinians. Listen up. Bad news for Canadians, you have 30 days to close your account. It's all control on the things they've set up that we need. There's going to be a closure of accounts, folks, in Canada. I don't even know what more to say about the way this works. They're giving you the notice that you can't do certain things in your monetary system. Do I read it? This has to do with actually going through day trading, I suppose, and how they take money in, how they can accept payments. Those of you that are in Scot trade, I'm sure it attaches to anything else. Our account records indicate that you are a citizen of Canada. Business and regulatory considerations prohibit us from conducting future business with Canadian citizens, even those who reside in the United States of America on a permanent or temporary basis. This letter serves as a notification. See, notice, opportunity, time, and place. That's your due process. Notification is the first step in the due process. This is serves. This is legal notification now. This is service of process of the notice. They say this stuff right here. If you knew what the words meant, you would realize how so-called judicial everything is. It's really official. It says it right in the letters. We would just read it. This raises the importance of what they're telling you. This is also notification for what? If you have an objection, you have the time now to quickly get in. You have 30 days. I tell you, the notification that is 30 days from the above date, we will be unable to accept deposits or permit opening securities transactions, including orders to buy securities for your account. You will still be able to enter closing orders, transfer your account to another financial institution, or withdraw funds from your account if you choose to transfer your account to another financial institution. Scot Trade will waive the $70 transfer out fee. So you think you have some digital money you're going to spend somewhere the way you want? You think you're going to invest just the way you want to invest in these systems and securities? There's evidence that you Canuckistinians aren't going to be able to do that because you're citizens of Canada. How's that? In a way, I'm speechless for all of us. I mean, it's right in front of us. They're going to work out this blockchain thing, and you're going to have to be inside it. You can't even unless you're inside a certain system that somebody agrees with, you have no ability to do anything, not even trade in the speculations markets of the fraud. See, the fraud is not for you. The fraud is for the government to continue. The fraud is for these companies to be engaged in if they want to continue. Apparently, Scot Trader, this is a low-hanging fruit for these people, too. They don't care to have... that must be an annoyance for the system. So, writing's on the wall. You keep it up. Just keep being crickets. This is just an example in this securities trading. This will be across the board, folks. We've been talking about it for years. At some point I get a little frustrated. I keep talking about it. It's the same thing over and over and over. And it's not that I like to repeat this stuff. I just want to show you different ways to look at it, because I can see that we need to know. I need to be that, if I can call it this way, that watcher that kind of keeps explaining this. Because if I shut down, it occurs to me, if I shut up, you lose the example of a different thought that might actually save someone else. Under the knowledge I have that it doesn't take a bunch of someone else's all working independently but together to just stop this, to stop it. Another thing going on, which is another lie in the lie that brings out some certain things in Canada. Polar bear parts, I was talking about before, polar bear parts won't be opposed by the United States anymore. Inuit hunters may have just brought down their biggest quarry ever. The United States Fish and Wildlife Service has decided to stop pushing for an international ban on the trade in polar bear parts, an effort that has been strenuously opposed by Inuit and Canadian governments. That get to the bottom line of all this. So the United States Forest Service is trying to do this endangered species and always waste all this money stopping all these frauds, and they do it by no science at all, but by fraudulent, the science pocus. They're now going to stop the resistance against killing polar bears. For all y'all that were wondering about the baby seals, now we're not going to see the polar bears. Now, actually what happens, about 300 animals gets taken a year. What was really interesting in this story, that Russia's not up against it. Russia doesn't like this either because they claim that Canadian permits are being used to exploit more polar bear kills. That's why they're still not liking this. But the United States Forest Service, for all of its big protection, conservation of the animals condition, they're going to back out and let the polar bears be killed. Remember, these are all the polar bears that are standing on ice cubes in the Arctic because there's no ice and they're dying anyway, right? Other evidence that the United States is not actually operating under the climate change type ideas, underneath conservation type ideas, underneath we got to save the species type ideas. They're working for wherever the bottom line works best. Apparently they got something else going. They got another fire burning that they got to do. But they're not going to waste no more time to protect the polar bear. Well, then maybe they weren't worth it, all the time and energy and money they spent to protect them up to now, right? Maybe they were just interfering with the Inuit Indians' culture, weren't they? Or is this how unprincipled we are? We fight until we don't want to fight no more. Oh, it might have been a good idea and we really should stick with it, but oh no, we're gonna stop fighting that. That principle's not worth holding anymore. How unprincipled is that either? And that's a reflection of the people. Again, there's policies made that just go for an agenda. I didn't even look deep enough on all that. I just said, look at the nonsense here. More of the fraud. They're not even following their own stuff. They're not following everything they tell us they want you to do. No, they want us to do. They don't give us what they would do to solve the problem when we have the capacity to do so. They're just as soon destroy stuff as conserve it, and that brings us again the inferno that's up in Canuckistan. Mass evacuations as apocalyptic inferno engulfs Canadian tar sand city. Folks, I don't know about Canadian forestry, but I do know that Canada quite a few decades ago could outproduce logs cheaper than the United States, and there was a political decision to not let that happen. That allows, because of the increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which I'm not saying causes global warming, I'm saying that that's a natural consequence of certain other dynamics that would allow the plants to grow bigger, and we know that because ice core samplings, if we can agree with that, they show a distinction whether or not it's accurate, that the atmosphere had much, much higher concentrations of carbon dioxide when we're also told there was much bigger plants and animals. Kind of shows us a natural dynamic that we could go a lot more, and we're going to have a lot more growth of the plants. That predicts a pretty nasty situation when you're not cutting your forests. When a fire goes off of whatever cause, it's going to be almost impossible to stop. We're seeing the apocalypse of forest mismanagement here and possible political decisions to not let Canada give us log homes. Because what's growing in Canada, just by its overgrowth, is so much that just swamps everybody else's production. That's now burning. 500,000 acres. That was we got a burnt biscuit around us. Big nasty fire, burns, scars everything. It sterilizes ground 6 to 8 feet deep. Hardly anything can come back in these places. We also found JeffersonMiningDistrict.com. You want to go over there, left-hand side, go down to the big picture, the nice little red, yellow, and brown picture. It shows where we have United States Forest Service planning to burn the forest by not harvesting and then blame it on acts of God. That this has the earmarks of that all over it. How much carbon and soot is going in the atmosphere right now, folks, over this? That if you properly manage the forest harvest on sustained yield, not sustainability, but sustained yield, would would show and prove to resolve a lot of this. Now, certainly we're not going to stop forest fires, but the severity and the damage that gets done underneath these political manipulations and financial manipulations and non-free trade backroom deal type stuff is really, it's killing people. It's killing all the green, it's killing all the animals, it's killing everything that the government say that they're trying to protect. It's putting more carbon into the atmosphere, putting more soot, making life miserable, destroying property, all because you don't properly manage the harvest. How do I know that's a proof? Because where we've seen forest fires that started on public land, that went to private land that was properly thinned, in other words, they're doing what the government should be doing, the forest fire stops. What other proof do I need? I don't need to be a scientist. I got proof. In every case up in the Northwest where there's properly thinned forests, and these private properties are on sustained yield harvesting cycles, the fire that starts on the public lands goes to the private and is stopped, and they lose all that land to sterilization in the public land. That's mismanagement. When you have a map that says they're planning for stage 3, class 3 fires, which are unstoppable, what you see is apocalyptic in Kanukistan, is the stuff they're planning to blame God, the thing that the atheists, the government, the neutral atheist government would say doesn't exist. They're going to blame it on acts of God. It's mismanagement. When you have fires that last too long, that's a business. That's not firefighting, as I commented prior. I have a little bit of experience in firefighting, in forest firefighting. I've got a guy I rely on who wrote the rules on how you firefight as one of my sources to back up what I may not know. It's not that hard to figure out either, like any of this stuff. I am hard-pressed to believe that what happened certainly may even been an accident, but the policies that are made to make forests so thick that you find an apocalypse that starts to burn in these times, and we have the machinery to keep it in tow, to keep your grass cut correctly, to keep your bushes trimmed up, is really inexcusable. And then they'll blame you for your carbon footprint. It's a crime. All that, do you understand how many log homes, literal log home, not stick frames, log homes, century-lasting log homes they would make by the wood that's already burnt, that could have been being pulled from those forests all this time to keep it from doing this, is another type of crime. Log homes, pretty interesting. They don't knock down. I was talking to a friend of mine, he's going through the list. They don't knock down in an earthquake. They don't necessarily, if you just simple moisturizing, they won't burn up in a forest fire. They last for near ever. They're insulated. You don't need to build insulation or extra materials to bring them in. The walls themselves make it. They got thermal insulation both for heat and cool. They would use up you'd think they use up a whole lot more trees, but we're only using them for one house for that time. And after that, 100 years goes by. We got a couple forests have grown between that and the last time. And yet we have these policies, and we see now the truth. Climate change is put on you. The government could care less about it. If it benefits the corporations, that's fine. Again, the government is crime. The government has become crime. The government wasn't crime, from my understanding, as like we see from mining districts, however. When did we move from that common sense, common-made, people-active government to what we have today and allow it? It is why we're seeing what's going on today. I don't know what they're going to do to stop the apocalypse in Kanukistan. I saw a big river. I hope they use that. I understand they started cutting timber. That's another thing. You just got to, as soon as you have a fire that's that big, start cutting timber. Cut wide swaths of timber down. Just cut it down. Hopefully they did it on the back, some on the front side of that river, but some on the back side from where the fire was going. Hopefully they are in not government-controlled burn mode right now, because it's gotten so bad, they're into stopping this thing. But see, you got to burn. You either lose all that if you don't log, you lose it, folks. It's that simple. When it gets like this, and we get into accelerated forest growth rates, we're going to lose to fire what we don't cut properly. It's just the way it works for everybody that seems to want to be a old growth, environmental type. Yeah, I've been in old growth, and I'll tell you, they're magnificent, and they are a forest. Every one of us needs to experience an old growth forest, and I agree with trying to keep some of them. But when you use that as your plan, you're talking disaster. You probably never ever get there in the truth of it, because the forests get too overbushed, overcut, overgrown, and they burn to apocalyptic proportions. Folks, I've seen fires before. The video I've watched from the flames coming from this fire scares me sitting behind the woodshed. When it doesn't go incendiary until it reaches 1,000 feet, because there's no oxygen down there, but it is above, and it turns into a glowing ball of gas, you've got a big problem on your hands. You only get that when you have the fuel. See, in this case, we don't even have oxygen down below. It's so hot. There's no oxygen, but we have all this gas looking for oxygen. So it's fuel problem now. That's lack of cutting. So there's a proper way to do this, and there's the improper way. And the improper way we're finding is really government plan. That is something another set of us has to regard, has to look at. So go to Jefferson Mining. If you want to see the map of the proof, jeffersonminingdistrict.com, left side, go down about, I don't know now where it is, a scroll or so. See the map. The red parts on that map are class 3. The government is mandated to not have more than 10% of those red parts on any map at any time, because those red parts are fires that cannot be stopped until nature stops them. And the management of the forest in the United States of America is to be no better, worse than class 2 and on the inside of class 2. You'll notice, I've discussed this before, you'll notice on the map there is no class 1 notated. There's supposed to be almost everything in class 1. The United States Forest Service and the BLM is no different as we find the same type planning. They are planning to blame acts of God for their mismanagement, is what I see going on in Canuckistan. Without being able to prove the same thing, I can just tell you that there's just something way wrong with letting the governments even looking at their land to get this out of whack and not stop it. So the quick idea was to start harvesting, folks. We all should be getting, again, like our solar cells. We could be given logs to build log homes. Giving, because the answer, if you don't, is you get them burned up and people die and people get hurt and equipment gets lost and property gets destroyed. And this is sterilization time for that land, folks. I'm just telling you, there's not much going to come back in this land for a long time. And it goes deep. This is that bad. Apocalyptic, I don't even know if that word would really cover it, actually. And this is how my thought is, my problem with this is it just looks like it's by plan. Again, another type of crime. For whatever reason, if it's tacked to monetary problem because of shipping, logs and things, wow. How would we ever see that? That's just the way they work it. You have to be really, really close scrutiny to find that was the reason. That you just couldn't harvest up there in Canuckistan just because the powers that the commerce powers that have just shut you down from doing so. And that what are you going to do when you don't know about that? What are you going to do as a people that don't look forward into the time, like we're starting to do wherever we're, like Jefferson Mining District coordination, we're advancing to the commissioners. You better think into the future, because, well, now we can use this. The apocalyptic inferno in Canada is us anywhere that has trees. The climate, the 800 parts per million they've measured of carbon is what's feeding an accelerated growth they couldn't keep up with before. Think about that. Their thinning could not keep up with the growth for purposes of keeping it at class 1 and class 2. That harvesting may not now be able to keep up. So when you're into full-blown harvesting to try and keep the fire danger down, just keeping up against the apocalyptic response of the forest, you may still lose that battle. We're so far behind on our how we understand nature. And we're supposed to be science-based? Are you kidding me? No, that's all fraud. It's science-focused to put forward an agenda that not even the governments agree with. How long are you going to stand for that, folks? Are you going to be one of those people that gets burn out? You're going to allow to watch to someone see someone burn out? Or are you going to step up somewhere and help figure this out to stop this nonsense? There's so much that we produce that we could be giving to ourselves, just for a place to use, just to have to use it so we don't die or get our land turned to cinder. There's so much we do that's in excess, to the point the United States can buy so much cheese they don't even know what to do with, and they're willing to spend refrigeration, electrical, and refrigeration and maintenance costs to store it. Production is pretty interesting when man puts his mind to it. And yet we are for want, we're in austerity. That's a criminal plan. Any of you that haven't seen that, you're not paying attention. And if you're not focusing your attention on that, your days are numbered. If it's not you, you'll be out of here. It's your sons and daughters. And all those future generations they talk so highly about protecting. Thousands of tons of dead creatures hit Chile's beaches. Was another story. Commerce, the production, nature, how much goes on, what we see, the death and destruction around us. What bothered me here was the blaming of something that may have been something else. And this is the whole point behind why I even bring this stuff. We have to see through some of these deceptions to see what the truth might have been, because there might be a nice, simple, logical answer behind it that some concentrated effort to correct may fix. At the start of this year, an estimated 40,000 tons of salmon and 8,000 tons of sardines washed into up the Chilean coast as a result of El Nino. Heaps of dead whales, salmon, sardines blamed on the El Nino freak weather phenomenon have clogged Chile's Pacific beaches in recent months. El Nino did it. Scientists, the magi of science pocus, largely blame the anomalies on El Nino. Okay, I don't mean to insult my Spanish-speaking friends. El Nino, I can do it. I can't roll an R, but I can do the N-Y, okay? El Nino, because this is a character in the scheme of things. El Nino done it, a disruptive weather phenomenon that comes with warming sea surface temperatures, listen carefully, in the equatorial Pacific. Chile has 4,000 kilometers or 2,400 miles of Pacific coastline, making it highly vulnerable to El Nino. El Nino-zilla or something. Folks, I look at this and I guess. But you know, when you look down there, it's the same problem I had with Fukushima up in north. There's a cold water upwelling that comes down from the Arctic along the northwest coast of the United States of America that goes all the way down and upwells all cold water up in front of the coast all the way down to the Baja California. This is how I partly started to see how Fukushima could not have done it. Currents coming from Japan to go into British Columbia. Impossible. What I did see at the same time was that iron experiment that they were supposed to create all these algae organisms in order to cause their little bodies to die. Once the iron fertilizer dried up around them, they'd die and they'd sink to the bottom, and we'd sequester carbon based on this fraud. And I told you that happens, and that algae gets made. They're going to deplete the waters of oxygen, and that water's going down the coast. You're going to see the death and destruction of organisms all along the coast. Next thing what we heard was what? Dissolving sea stars, starfish. And then I told you that, and then we heard that there was no salmon up along the coast where they were fishing. The fisheries were dead. I said, well, they're dead because there's no oxygen in that water, and it was no interaction with the surface enough to keep it oxygenated, because all the little sea creatures they fortified sucked it all out of the water. I said the fish went off way out into the Pacific. What was a month later? They said, oh, the salmon, we found them. They're way off in the Pacific. Okay, I'm reminding you that because there's a dynamic there. Algae blooms are deadly in certain concentrations. And I'm pulling from a long, long time ago memory. I wanted to be an oceanographer. I got into this stuff. Did I become one? Am I a scientist? No, I'm not going to go that far. There's a lot I don't know. I was into chemistry and biology at the time. Pretty good in the chemistry, really. Why I told you early on when I was on the other broadcast, I had brought Arthur Robinson on, and I knew that the oceans had sucked up more carbon dioxide than anything, than even the trees in the land, and I posed that to the chemist, the doctorate, Arthur Robinson, and he agreed. So this was a common knowledge to those of us that were interested in science and chemistry and this kind of thing. That let me suggest to you that instead of El Nino doing it, that surface temperatures were too warm, which may, if they were, could have caused this problem. It wasn't El Nino itself more than, I think you looked at, remember, the water coming from here, no different than it comes down the face of Northern California, comes up from the Antarctic into the Chilean waters there. It's pushing from the bottom up cold water out. The heat's not coming in there. It's up, cold water upwelling. Why the fishery is so rich. Why there's so many fish. That any fertilization in there at the right time of year can cause these algae blooms, which will suck all the oxygen out of that water. That my thought was, better than just these El Nino did it. We talked specifically in the article about sardines, 8,000 tons and 40,000 tons of salmon. And all I could think about that right there, folks, was predator-prey. And the sardines are about done. They're down to 8,000, and maybe we don't know what got away here, but they're down to 8,000 tons running into the coastline while the salmon are out after them. Like this happens all the time. We kind of don't understand all this. And the the sardines started looking ahead, and they sensed a murky water, and they kept heading for it. Why? Because they need cover in the open ocean. Their 8,000 ton school was not big enough to scare off the 40,000 tons of salmon going after them to eat them. What about the tuna? I mean, this is just a big feeding frenzy down there. We're lucky to get our part, I think. And they happen to run into this murkier water, this water that wasn't quite so clear because it's full of algae, and that algae was so dense that it sucked all the oxygen out of it, and before the predator or the prey or anybody coming in like the bigger whales had figured it out, it was too late. No oxygen. All because of these little bitty microscopic algae. But no, folks, El Nino did it. And that's their story, and that was caused by climate change, and so that's what goes on. I hope these people picked all that food up, or those animals up, and they made fertilizer out of them, because that would have been not a waste at that point. But this kind of dynamic is used to sell to you natural processes. I'm not saying that the water's not polluted in places. I'm not saying that we're doing a terrible job at all that. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is that there is a dynamic in this world, eat or be eaten, and your government is eating you alive, a parasite sucking from your life, and you may find out that you are being driven into a place and you're all going to die. Remember, the government is you. So if you fail and die, it dies too, and then the next primitives come along. This is kind of like the natural consequence as well. You can blame it on anybody. El Nino or El Nina or whatever else you want to call it. Fukushima. We're doing it to ourselves, and we're not stopping it is the most important part. But to me, it was more sensible to believe that this is somewhat of a natural consequence more than to try and blame science pocus, giving credit to people who really don't have a clue. They think El Nino did it. They don't know. No one does any measurements anymore. No one knows before and after, is right there to witness the thing. No, they fabricate evidence at every turn. And then they blame the slaughter on El Nino. They don't care. This is the object. They're just going to get you involved. Pretty soon, you're the beast of burden. You're the one running into the coast to try and find a cover for this thing that they've thrown on you, trying to hide your carbon footprint against their pursuit to get the taxation from you that you can't pay because you don't have a digital account and you're still a carbon-creating unit. When you head into the shallow waters where the water gets murky, seeing maybe you're going to get cover and there's something else you didn't know you couldn't run into, and it takes your last of your life force away. it seems like a natural dynamic. We're missing the point on all this, to me, that we have evidences of everywhere else. They blame the wrong thing. They create scenarios. We buy into them. We don't recognize this going on all the time. Do you think I like all the fish dying? No, but there's fish dying everywhere. Do you think I like when they made that experiment that no one had a word on, put the fertilizer in, and all of a sudden after I predicted that it would happen, we see the West Coast dying? That's on top of what the Navy said they were going to be doing? Do you think I'm saying this because I like it, I'm supporting it? No, but we have to understand the proper dynamic before we can even get after how we don't do that no more if that's what we want to stop. But we find out our government doesn't want to do that. That's another part of this. Why not? Maybe let's make them do certain things that would benefit us. Stop letting them wag the dog. Stop letting the parasite attach into the back of our neck and start thinking for us. That takes some effort. Otherwise, you become fodder, and they're going to add to that. Female draft eligibility proves disrespects liberty, says Ron Paul is the title. Folks, warmongers are fodder. You are being used. I've told you before, women are treated as men in law. You can't get away from it. It's not my opinion. It's what goes on. Women do not have a distinct identity other than man, and now we all have a distinct identity as people too, being corporations, legal entities. But these people don't care, like they don't care about not using the same law they put on you. These people will put you out as fodder, and they are extending now selective service to women as a requirement, at least has been put before I think it's the Congress. As the United States Congress approves a measure that requires women to register with selective service, former presidential hopeful Ron Paul points out that while the move may seem like a vote for gender equality, listen to the integration, it actually just makes the entire U.S. population. This is a serious aggression against the population of the United States as well. And we understand that the people that are making these decisions don't care about us. They care about what they're doing, and they care about promoting what they do, where they can get away with it. As the Bar Association House Resolution document tells us, was where appropriate. Where appropriate means where they can get away with it. I say it equates to if you have the republic, if you can keep it. That was their license to try and get away with stealing it. So I don't like to talk too much about me and my family, but I am not liking hearing this at all. I know I have a totally different analysis I just put to you. You know, and on this Mother's Day, for all y'all have mothers, go hug them, call them, kiss them. They are the women that are going to be going now in the future to selective service, and what appears to be an ongoing telegraphing that the United States is going to be going and doing war, and we're going to now make women equal and bring them to war, and that should make you happy. And what this is to put more bodies on the line, to fight more wars in the world, to go kill other people, on all the evidence they've shown you, which is complete war crimes. This is just not getting you, it's just not putting the entire population eligible for the military draft. This is becoming future fodder for future wars. That they even brought up gender equality should be an alarm bell, and the women should be stepping up in droves here. Not to resist the fact of maybe being brought in to fight under selective service for that reason. The women, I guess the Peshmerga women? They're the frontline fighters actually in their place, and I think they did that on purpose. They're smart people. They know that apparently the Islamic rebels, or if you call them rebels, the terrorists, they don't want to be shot by a woman and killed. I think that's a pretty smart move. Do I want the women up front? No, but they're choosing to do so. It's not a forced thing. It's not a pre-registered forced pool of people to pull from, to make fodder out of. It's interesting in different countries how they do what they need to do, and their reason sounds a little more reasonable than forcing people under mandate of law. And I would go back. We can go on, start talking jurisdictionally and all that, but I won't take any more time. There's just so much to go on. If you want your women protected, folks, they're passing a bill You better learn enough about the selective service and what it does and what it doesn't do and the plans that are being run behind the scenes and what the government's being used for. If you expect to protect your women and I'm talking to you men now, expect to protect your women and future people like us, and that will be your offspring. These people are out to kill you off. I don't know if you hear the stories behind the scenes, and we just hear little glimpses of how women are actually treated in the military. It's not so cool. I don't talk about them as prisoners on the other end. I'm talking about the military itself. It's one big organized criminal condition. Everywhere we look, it's a target-rich environment. The war we're in is not the one that they're going to send you to, folks. Now, why are you going to let them send you there? It's controlling us completely without any question or challenge to the right to do so. Again, the crickets is going to be it's the war we're going to lose. And these wars are fought for what? Control, for economic servitudes, for control of geopolitical things, to ultimately go by plans that they tell us there's no plan B. There's something working. There's no plan A either. They tell us that. I mean, this is the thing. I have a joke they keep attributing to this unqualified one, Obama, that he had any plan at all, and he told us they had no plan. How can you have a plan B when you don't have a plan? Let alone a plan. A is of a list. You have to have a plan first before you decide you're going to break it out in a list. You don't even have a plan. How do you attribute this to some kind of a rational consequence of what we're seeing, that they're going there into places rationally? So the whole bottom line is they tell you one thing, but they're after another. They tell you climate change and you're susceptible and liable to it, and yet they don't care. They tell you that they don't want to carbon in the atmosphere, and they let the forest burn. They tell you that you're going to be controlled by the fiscal, the digital currency in the world, the cashless society coming. So again, monetary constructions are going to be very important in our lives to all this. Paying for it all, supposedly. The business wrapped around the supposed, mitigation of it all. It's all big, corrupt business here, and we watch it. And as long as they apparently feed you what you think you need and just enough of it, you're going to stay complacent. And eventually the world changes to what they want. And if you can't see that they don't care about you, and that's going to bring harm to you, listen, as I said before, we have a world that we really, literally can produce everything we need. Why is there austerity? That's only because of the monetary control system that we also continue to allow. And partly that's what's coming up now, as we started to see. It kind of came out of this Panama Papers type thing, which I told you was really like kind of a non-issue. It's a whole different thing. And now the guy talking about it that's supposed to be John Doe, he talks about global governance issues. It's completely ridiculous. But a story came up, FATCA causing chaos worldwide for Americans. I found this interesting and tie into all that and the fiscal connection and digital cash and all the controls they want to bring on. And laws that have been here before we even get there. The Illegitimate Revenue Agency, IRS, has just announced that the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, FATCA, has been postponed from July 1st of 2014 to January 1st, 2016. This is an older news to bring up the next story here. This is good news in many ways for both those with assets that they wished to internationalize, as well as the dollar and U.S. banking system itself, but in many ways the damage has already been done. The FATCA, signed into law 2010, it ensures that if you don't tell the United States government where your assets are and how much there is, your bank will no matter where the bank exists. The bank will tell them no matter where the bank exists. The FATCA, this is global now. Remember, what I just read was global. It's an international reach of the IRS. If you don't think the IRS is already connected to the global system, way beyond, it's a corporation, it's an offshore corporation. FATCA has been acknowledged as the death of the dollar by many experts, including our own FATCA expert, Jim Carger, who recently stated such at our recent TDV Wealth Management Crisis Conference in both Panama and Mexico. Many foreign banks simply won't comply. The cost and risk of complying outweighs the benefit of accepting American clients. What do we hear about Canada, Canuckistan? We can't use you. We can't take your money. Now, here was a bill in 2010 that these people are talking about. They said it's the death of the U.S. dollar. I doubt it. This is about control. The dollar is tied to something else. This was an act prior to the Panama Papers, and they mentioned Panama and Mexico in this article is why I'm bringing it up first, because there was an act that this starts to speak to in what happened in the Panama Papers as the globalists, these people that are pulling the strings, are wanting to control. This was ahead of us. Panama Papers is just a notice to you that it's already kind of triggered. That it was going to cause trouble was known already 6 years ago. That it was coming. That Panama, they were having meetings in Panama over it. Can't say that this was just not known. Not the Panama Papers and the supposed expose, that it's going on and the IRS is involved with controlling it. Again, you got to go look through the IRS to the World Bank and IMF and all that and the Bank of International Settlements, most importantly. Continuing FATC, chaos impacts long-term expats in Canada. See, before, they talk about Canada and the Canuckistanians can't deal with stock trade because their accounts aren't quite right because of these certain laws. Well, this is the law that kind of messed it all up. It refers to Americans here going into Canada now. This is 6 years ago, folks. This is like Panama Papers is non-news, I guess. Problems with retaining bank accounts and complying with complicated regulations are hitting hard on all U.S. expats, but those who emigrated to Canada many years ago are experiencing a worse effect. I won't go more. I'm just telling you there was, with the Panama Papers, I did a back search to see, okay, this was implementing something. Give us notice for something for some reason. These laws are already in place, already affecting people. When they came up with the frivolous corporate governance nonsense about jobs equality and all that, that's the migration problem being spoken of through this so-called John Doe. This is the global imposition. It kind of confirmed everything I was telling you. It's really a non-issue here. This has already been going on. This is sort of going back and seeing the proof of it. So because there was these expatriates that were in Canada and all over moving around, this act was causing trouble, meant to cause trouble. This is not something they've been trying to lock down. The government wants to lock it down. It's been trying to lock it down for a long time, as I told you in a prior broadcast. And so I found another point, people trying to resolve it. What's the best way for expats to transfer money abroad? This is a real problem. People are now discussing, what do we do if we're expatriates out of the country? How are we going to get our money? They're locking it all down. That's what I was telling you. Look very carefully to watch, follow, and do what the big boys do. So this little, what's the best way for expats to transfer money abroad? You think you're leaving and you think you're kind of escaped? You better watch out, folks. Those of you leaving, those of you think you're going to run away. If you're involved in this, if you're independent of it, then that's pretty much solved until they knock on your door and haul you off because you're independent. But what's the best way for expats to transfer money is an issue. There was an article based on this fact of the Panama Papers and the control of your monetary system globally, no matter where you are, how this is all being controlled over the top of us, kind of overwhelming in a way. How do you address it all? Still, go local. Like I said, send a letter. Maybe if you got the fact that the government ought to be giving you the Dubai deal, that's one less leg of the leash that they have around your neck. When you have all the power you want, you can start growing your food. They want to start attacking you, then you bind together as local property owners and say, we have the right to do it, and you go after your local government to insist on it. You fight locally now. But those that are out are having trouble. This is what this was all about. This is what the Panama Papers was exposing. It wasn't going to it didn't expose anything. It was just letting you know they're now coming down on you, and you're not going to have a place to hide, and you're going to have to get real savvy. So I found what's the best way for expats to transfer money abroad. It had nothing to do with me. I don't know nothing about it. I'm behind the woodshed. Got near nothing. At some point, I've got to worry about it. I last until my reserves are done, and that's over. I'm done. Property, nothing in the state. So all this stuff is irrelevant to me, but all y'all are involved up to your eyeballs. But there's a lot of you, this story, there is there's a lot you need to figure out when you move abroad. Sure, there are the big things like finding a home, getting a job, and locating a good school. And then there are those little things that still make a huge difference in the long run, like how to send money back home and from home to your new location. So I won't get into, you can read this stuff. Very important. I think you should read it even if you're not going to go do it, to anticipate when they start locking this place down. Every place you are is going to be a foreign place. You already can't go across the border now for trading. That's electronic stuff, folks, where it should not matter. It's being locked down on us, so I can tell you, you better start getting ahead of this game. They're 6 years ahead of most people. Any expat already probably knew this. But those of us that aren't paying attention thought the Panama Papers was something big, and when they came out with the global agenda written as a purpose, I said, no, this is the setup. And I've said, that said, go and find out what the big boys are doing and mimic what they do as an alternative reality that to what you're doing, and that might help ameliorate some of the problem. Because the global corporate governance is on us. They're getting advantage at every turn, because that's the bottom line. That's all it's really about right now. And we aren't integrated enough of people anywhere in order to throw that off. As I was going to move on to another necessity, your health care, and I got just a moment here. Google AI gains access to 1.2 million confidential NHS patient records. Do No Evil is getting your records. If you don't think this is Soylent Green on the future and managed health care and this and that from Google, you don't think that they're not evil and they're not part of this, folks, wake up. Wake up. It's going global. It's going global in a fast and a big way. Thank you for tuning in today. Appreciate that. RealLibertyMedia.com is where the broadcaster will be. Grimner, I appreciate your help and all the things you do. We also have UCY.tv. Thank you, Jules, for simulcasting. And anybody else who does that simulcast, markonthebeast.yahoo.com. And anybody who wants donations, markonthebeast.yahoo.com. Thank you to the terrestrial broadcasters. Appreciate that you send the message out. I wish we had a lot more people to hear what I'm trying to let people know, and move on into what we can do about it, and actually get together. I'd like to see our coming behind the woodshed and casting reports of the successes we're slaying them in their own game. So that'll be a hope in the future. Apparently, it hasn't happened for quite a few years now. But the nooses on all our necessities is closing around our neck, and it's up to us to pull it off of us, and start to demand better and remove this problem. Thank you very much again. Take care. I'll tech diffs and nature willing, I'll be back next week.